Okay, good evening. Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. I'm making this without Misty. I'll do Misty later into the evening or early tomorrow morning. But with Coinbase having blowout earnings, somewhat muted in the aftermarket, I think it could explode, and I wanted to let you all know about a critical point we're at. A lot of positives, a lot more positives than negatives. So I wanted to get this video out. And let me start really with some earnings information and just show you how positive it is. So Coinbase reported better than expected revenue in its first quarter earnings. How did the company do compared to analysts? Well, earnings of $4.40 per share, that may not be comparable to the $1.09 average. I would say so. So total revenue 1.64 billion versus 1.34. Excuse me. So one of the things that happened here, so every metric they blew out. Okay, and we had run up pretty high in the day and closed around 228. And the aftermarket, in my opinion, a lot of times day traders, I mean, it flew up to 243, then it flew back down to like 212, and it, ended up closing $5 less around 223 in the aftermarket versus the 228. Now, I think one of two things are going to happen. When we open pre-market, this thing could go 240, 250, 260, totally a breakout. I wanted to show you what that means on charts, and I wanted to give you some of my rationale for why. Okay, so one of the key things here, and a lot of people don't understand this, the profit in the quarter, okay, included a 630 million mark-to-market gain on crypto assets held for investment. Well, there was a new FASB, which is Financial Accounting Standard Board, if for those of you that aren't in the know. They set the rules for how corporations, individuals account for things, okay? So Michael Saylor was leading behind this because what the old rule and law was prior to September 23 of 2023 was if you owned a lot of Bitcoin and you had a paper loss on your assets and they went down, you had to report that as a loss. But on the other side of the coin, you like that pun, you didn't have to and couldn't say you had a gain, right? So Michael Saylor lobbied the MicroStrategy CEO, since they're the largest corporation owning it, and I think this cleared the way for Coinbase and other corporations to own it. So Coinbase owns a significant amount, nowhere near what MicroStrategy owns, but they own BTC for some of the treasury funds. And what happened is they elected, because this law goes into effect for the end of 2024. So starting in 2025, when you do your taxes for 2024, you're forced to do mark to market. What that means, if I own an asset like crypto, right, and it's a new category, I have to go out and say, what's it worth now when I report this quarter versus what I paid for it? So they had, the profit in the quarter included a 650 million mark-to-market gain on crypto assets held for investment in connection with the company's adoption of updated accounting standards. Okay, but even if you subtract the 650 million, they had $1 billion. All their other metrics, okay, were very good, right? Coinbase shares climbed, forget that. Okay, during the Bitcoin, okay, let's get out of that and get on to what they did and other pieces, right? So I read it on a few different sites, but like their revenue, just their service revenue, their revenue they collect for all the transactions, everything, right? Consumer transaction revenue was 930 million for the quarter, up well over 100% from the year earlier period. Total transaction revenue almost tripled in the quarter. Okay, so everything by all means was a blowout. But again, this is the last I'm going to say about this. I think what happens when a stock climbs the way that Coinbase has climbed 2, 3, 400% in a relatively short period of time, analysts and people are pricing it for perfection. In my opinion, they performed perfectly, but somebody could say that they didn't. Well, they had 650 million for BTC. That'll never happen again. How do they know? I would think quarter 3 and quarter 4, when it's all said and done and we get to 100,000 in BTC, that they'll have tremendous gains again. So you can't really say it's a one-time revenue. Yes, of course, Q2 they could come out and lose money on Bitcoin if we don't move up in May and June, right? But I think their earnings on their earnings ought to be comparable. And like I said, every statistic on their general revenue was up. Okay, so enough of that. Let's go and let's look, I think, on something that to me, I drew a different chart pattern here, and I wanted you guys to see this because it became kind of obvious to me that this pattern was in play. And that is a descending triangle pattern. So I'm drawing it right now on a chart, and then I'm going to drag that over here for you guys. Hold on just a second, because I think this is critical, and you see where we're at, you'll see why I think this is so important. All right, let me start with the definition. Okay, let me tell you what I'm talking about when I say a descending triangle. Okay, typically, and a lot of people have this wrong, if you look up Investopedia or something, it'll say descending triangles, okay, are a bearish pattern. Well, they're both bearish and bullish, right? It depends on which way you break out. You have a horizontal line here, and you have a trending, downtrending line because you're getting lower highs and you go back to the same resistance point, right? So if you look somewhat here on this pattern, and let me drag this over, okay, and you can draw this in a couple different places, right? You could draw it here where you're just above this, and you've had false breakouts to the downside. But bottom line, the way I drew it, this is where we were, right? We closed around 228. Well, if we move up, any way you look at it, you're going to break a downtrending line, right? This also can be construed as a head and shoulders. So you really want to avoid going below 200. There, a lot of times you can be forming multiple chart patterns. But I think we have the opportunity, if this becomes well understood by the market tomorrow, pre-market maybe, but when the market opens, this thing could go 240, 250. And that clearly is a breakout here on this downtrending line. Now, sometimes what happens, you do that for a day or two and you come back to the scene of the crime, as Gareth Soloway likes to say, and you retest this line. Who knows, right? Let me give you one more positive. So let's take a look. What's Bitcoin doing since it trades, okay, in the after hours, right? 24 hours it trades. So you're sitting there at 60,000, which again is a very much a technical support. I'd like to see it get to 61, but just fabulous things going on. So let's see what we do. If we trade back down and get a muted back down to 215 and stay in here, I don't see that as a positive. This volume is starting to move, so I would love nothing more than to see us go up 235, 240, right? I preferably 240 so we can capture all of the weeklies. But I'm not that worried now because they've already made their decision in the evening on what the payment's going to be. Nobody I know is privy to that, and even if they were, they wouldn't tell us. So I see nothing but positives there. So now I'm going to continue in. I just wanted to get this out tonight so anybody seeing it. And remember, tomorrow is Declaration Day prior to the market open. So let's get back in to what I see for the payout based on these kinds of things. So I'm going to skip no transactions. There were 75,000 shares that were added. I don't need to go over all the normal stuff. Let's go and look at our weeklies because they're still at play, right? So with us being at 228 and CONY being 2507, we're closer. It's not going to impact this payout, right? What happens during the day and at the end of the day when they roll out of it. So if we run up to 240, that's not going to hurt anything. If we run to 250, it's going to hurt a couple of these, right? But we're still going to be below some. I don't see us going past those kind of levels. But I just wanted you to know that would help immensely the synthetic. And let me show you that while we're talking about it. We went from having a loss here of 97 million to only having a paper loss of 60, right? So I always show that on my holdings tab. So I updated the chart. So much better direction, right? If we go up to 240, we're looking great. So let's go to the payment tab. I'm going to keep this short. All right. So we added 75,000 shares. They didn't buy anything. They didn't do any trades. So right now, this drops a few pennies when you add some shares. So I'm showing $1.76 that they would gladly pay out. I'm showing 326 on the synthetic income, even though there's a book loss, right, of the 60 million going forward with 2 weeks and then Friday's trading. I see them, giving this 75 cents out of the 326, maybe $1, maybe $1.20. So my range is 250 to 295. And that's based also on the fact that they had excess, right? And that gives them a better feel for having that 60 million loss on paper. And who knows what Friday brings, right? They're not going to know when they announce this at 8:30 Eastern time, right? An hour before the market opens on the East Coast time. So anyway, really positive, guys. Just wanted you to know all of that info. I'll do a report on Saturday after Friday. I'll do Misty and YBit later. And thank you very much for all of you that write positive comments. I love it. It encourages me. I'm really happy as my subscriber count is growing. And I look forward to keeping all of you guys updated and giving you all the ins and outs of these funds and many more things that I plan to offer on some of my own personal trading and things that I'm doing in addition to these. Okay, so again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advice. Have a great, great evening. Good night.